Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So, what we want out of life, where we're going, and particularly what we want out of careers is an issue that lots of people have. And so I wanted to reach out to somebody who I think has got a point of view to help us in that regard. Lauren Malach, is that correct, Malach?
Malach, yeah.
Malach
Close.
is joining us. She's for over 13 years been an executive coach, a search director, and a professional coach. She's helped career and life changing turning points for unfulfilled executives and disengaged mid-career professionals. Just listen to that again. She has helped create career and life-changing turning points for unfulfilled executives and disengaged mid-career professionals. Sounds like I could have used your services at a couple times in my life. At the core of these turnarounds are the strategies she shares in her Wayfinding Method program. Through guided reflection and private coaching, Lauren's clients regain a sense of direction, self-belief, and agency, which leads to greater satisfaction and meaning at work and in life. Sounds fantastic. Lauren Malach, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Thanks, Brian. I'm good. Thank you so much for inviting me.
My pleasure. So this sounds like psychotherapy. What is the difference between recruiting, executive search, coaching, psychotherapy, and consulting?
I love it. There are definitely distinct differences. So I started my career way back when in fundraising, and then moved to the corporate sector where I spent 10 years in executive search, which was very transactional. And I worked with people to find their next career, their next career step. And it was very interesting to understand the motivations behind each move and what an individual was seeking. And after 10 years doing that myself, I began to seek more for my career and to wonder what was next. And I did a review on myself and my skills and my strengths and mostly what was missing. And I started to move toward coaching as a profession. I would say before I acted as a consultant, a search consultant, I would tell candidates exactly, how to structure their resume so that they could, let their value show, or exactly how to answer a particular interview question. So a consultant has the answers. They're an expert. They can tell you exactly how to do something to get the best result. If you look at coaching, and if you look at psychotherapy, those are very different models of expertise. So psychotherapy is something people would turn to if they're really suffering and struggling in their life, and they need support to understand where the problem lies in their thoughts, in their history, in their background, so that they can move forward. So a psychotherapist would focus on healing and would focus on helping people with mental illnesses and other kinds of suffering. A coach is kind of in the middle of the spectrum. So a coach's focus is very much on helping an individual move forward from where they are. It's very practically oriented. It's very goal oriented, and it's oriented around planning and action. That said, a coach does need to understand the beliefs that might hold someone back from action. So there is some crossover between therapy and coaching. But for example, a coach would never work with someone who has to heal them from depression or anxiety or PTSD. The coach would focus on someone who's trying to figure out what's next for them in life.
Okay, that's helpful. How does this all fit into the Wayfinding program that you've got, which sounds really quite interesting?
Mm-hmm. So I created the Wayfinding program as a kind of curated series of steps for people who are at a career crossroads. The first phase and the first step of the process is self-discovery and self-understanding. Most people get to a point in their life, especially around mid-career, midlife, where they've almost lost sight of who they are. Life is so busy.
They've lost sight of who they are? Really?
Yeah, to some degree, people are so busy in their lives, especially when they're raising families, they're working all the time, they're, hustling through the day. And not everyone, but many people come to a point in their life where they're like, who am I now? Like, what do I want? What do I want the rest of my life to be about? What do I have to offer? Where do I want to contribute? And those answers aren't always easily accessible to people because we just don't really think about them.
And so this wayfinding program helps them think about who they truly are.
Yeah, it helps them think about who they are at their best. It helps them think about what they're interested in, what they want to learn about. And it helps them create ideas about what else could be possible.
We're chatting tonight with Lauren Malach, who is a executive search director and a professional coach. And she is someone who has created something called the Wayfinding Method program, which she says is for all of us to figure out who we are and where we want to go in both career as well as in life. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Lauren in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight with Lauren Malach. She is a executive search director and a professional coach. She's helped create career and life-changing turning points for unfulfilled executives and disengaged mid-career professionals through strategies that she calls her Wayfinding Method program, that she takes people through guided reflection and private coaching. Sounds fantastic. We've just talked about the difference between coaching, psychotherapy, and consulting. I wonder, what are some of the common questions, some of the common struggles that people are going through that you meet in your practice?
Oh, excuse me. We've got some background noise. Can you hear that?
Yep.
Okay, hold on a sec. So for me, the most common questions people arrive with are, should I stay or should I go? What else is possible? Is this all there is? Who am I outside of my career and my title? And for me, people who are asking those kind of questions are, those are the people I work with.
Should I stay or should I go? Who am I outside of my career? Those are pretty big questions.
Absolutely. They are big questions.
Sounds almost more like something appropriate for a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or something like that than a executive recruiter.
Yes. And I wanted to talk about that too, because when we talk about executive recruiting, that's what I did prior to becoming a coach. So I'm no longer an executive recruiter or search director. That's what I did prior to starting my coaching practice. And I've been working as a coach exclusively for the last 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you're not a psychotherapist.
No, I'm not. Psychotherapists are licensed and trained and regulated. Coaching is a relatively unregulated industry. I'm a certified coach, and the International Coaches Federation is aiming to, change how coaching is regulated. But again, a psychotherapist is going to work with someone on healing and moving forward from past pain and present suffering as well. Whereas the coaching model is very much about taking action and planning for what's next. So as you mentioned, some of these questions seem like pretty weighty, big questions, and they are. But for many people, there's an action element to them as well. And that's why they come to work with me as a coach, because it's not just about figuring out what's next, it's about doing something about that. And so that's where also my background in executive search comes in, because I can help people shape their career story. I can help people prepare for interviews, or I can help them with the practical elements of what a search could look like. So while the questions are weighty, there's always an element for my clients of, and I need to do something about this.
What do you mean by career story?
So career story is how we talk about our path from then till now, how we talk about the choices that we've made along the way, and how we talk about what we've learned and what we want to do next. And all of that together is someone's career story.
And to get what, better satisfaction, or more direction in life, they need to have a career story, or what? To get a better job, they need to have a career story.
They need to have a career story to tell the world, whether it be for a job that they might be pursuing, or even when embarking on an entrepreneurial venture. We all need to be able to tell the world our story. But possibly even more important, for people at a crossroads, they need to have a good story to tell themselves. Because what happens when you're at a crossroads and you're feeling anxious and unfulfilled and frustrated and stuck is the story you're telling yourself is usually a negative one. I'm a failure for leaving. I never wanted to do this in the first place. I should have chose something else. And so the way we tell ourselves our story has a tremendous impact on our motivation, our sense of self-worth and self-belief. So in my work with my clients, the shaping of the career story is just as much for the outside world as it is for the individual themselves.
Really, that's interesting. So it helps people figure out themselves as well as communicate that to other people.
Absolutely. And oftentimes it helps people have a new perspective on themselves and a new outlook on their story so far.
And how do you do this? Just through chatting with them?
So it's that combination of the guided reflection where I offer my clients, a series of questions and activities to sit down and actually reflect on. And then we come together in the private coaching to explore their insights and also to, develop new viewpoints and perspectives on their outlook. And that's where the dialogue between the coach and the client can really create new perspectives, because there's only so far we can get on thinking about a problem on our own. It's when we collaborate with others that we can get new insights and new perspectives.
And so give me an example. If you sat down with me, what would be some of the questions you would ask me?
So, first, before we ever even met, I would send you my, big life questionnaire.
Life questionnaire. Oh my God.
Big life questions. I mean, that's not what it's called. That's just what I called it in this moment. It's called the Discovery Questionnaire. And I would ask you about what you want to happen in your life so that at the end of it, you would consider it satisfying. I would ask you what your gifts are, what your talents are, how you get in your own way. I would ask you about what lights you up, what activities have heart and meaning for you. I would ask you about your support system, about the people who inspire you, about people who have a positive influence in your life. Those kind of questions. And when you ask
life questions,
the big life questions, exactly. And maybe I'd also ask, what if you had a secret ambition? What would it be? Or what would your dream career be? And it's these kind of questions, as I mentioned earlier, that we don't typically stop and ask ourselves, right? I mean, so that's what I'd initially kind of.
So you go through that with someone, and they say they want to be Prime Minister of Canada, and what do you do with that?
So is that your secret ambition?
I'm just using it as an example.
No, but it's a funny example because people's, that one specifically hasn't come up, but I would say, yeah, well, what is it about it? About being the Prime Minister? What about that is attractive to you?
Helping people, making decisions, putting in infrastructure.
Great. And, did you ever pursue an avenue that would lead you toward that in your life? Did you participate in debate groups or, political activism? Like, why a prime minister?
Okay, so you probe.
So I get to the bottom of it because under the prime minister, you nailed it. You said, I want to help people. I want to make big decisions. I want to have an impact.
Right.
Okay, so now we have 3 criteria that are really important to you, right? So you can do that by being the prime minister, but you can do that through other means, which you have done in your career, right? I looked at your LinkedIn profile. You have, given back to your community. You have been someone who's a mover and a shaker with big decision makers. So in a lot of ways, sometimes who we want to be could already be who we are. Or if there's a gap, we may need to take action towards those desired goals.
And you find that a lot of people, even though they have these big dreams and big goals, just aren't going after them in work. And so therefore, what you're doing is helping them try to find ways to actually achieve their dreams.
Yeah, find ways to integrate their unmet wants and needs into their lives, whether it be through work, whether it be through extracurricular activities, whether it be through educational pursuits. The needs can be met in a number of different ways. So it doesn't always require that someone quit their job. Or even if it's past the point in someone's life where realistically they could be the prime minister, there are still ways that they can give back, that they can have an impact, and that they can be part of significant decisions.
Are you saying I'm too old to become prime minister? Thanks a lot.
Even if, we have to always aspire to, our worthiest
something more.
goals.
Well,
Exactly.
lots of smart people have said that the important thing in life is to have meaning, to have purpose.
That's what I believe. I think having a sense of meaning in life is vital to our well-being. It's also the way humans are built. We are meaning makers. We're always trying to make meaning. We're trying to make meaning of the small things and the big things.
What is the single biggest misconception people have as they seek deeper engagement in work and in life?
Yeah, I think the single biggest misconception is it's too late. I'm
too old.
Yeah.
I don't have enough education. I don't speak the language.
Mm-hmm. Or the other one, which is kind of the flip side of that, is I'd have to give it all up. I'd have to give up too much to get
what I
want. And so that really holds people back because they created a framework where in order to get what they desire, they have to give up their job, their security, all the things that, give them a sense of safety in the world. And that's a misconception.
How do you get over these misconceptions?
Well, I think part of it is understanding that there's more than one way to meet a need. That if you have a need for, let's say, having an impact or giving back to your community, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to leave your job at a corporate law firm. Perhaps you could take on a board role or a volunteer role or a community, give back role that will give you that, feeling that you're missing. So
there's other ways of finding that meaning.
Exactly. And it doesn't only have to be in your job.
We're chatting tonight with Lauren Malach. She is an individual who helps disengaged executives and mid-career professionals regain a sense of direction, self-belief, and agency in their life. Sounds fascinating. We're going to take a break for some messages, come back more in a minute with Lauren. And I'm going to ask her about what's happened during the pandemic, during COVID-19. And Lauren, you recently posted about the Great Resignation. I'm going to ask you a little bit about that. What was it? And why do you think people are unsatisfied at work and looking for something new? Stay with us, everybody. Lauren, back just in a minute.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Second 860. We're chatting tonight with Lauren Malach. She is a former executive recruiter. She's now a coach, and she helps disengaged executives and mid-career professionals regain a sense of direction, self-belief, and agency in themselves, in their careers, and in what they want to do in life. And she's developed a fascinating program called the Wayfinding program, which sounds sort of like what you've got in the Path, which is a wayfinding system of signs, of helping people figure out where they want to go. And she does this through a whole process. We had one discussion already about the big life questions, the Discovery Questionnaire that she goes through and tries to find out what people are all about. And then she has, I guess, a couple of sessions with them and comes up with both their career story as well as what people want to be remembered by and as, I guess, when their career is over or when their life is over. And so it sounds fascinating. But Lauren, I'm interested in what you think happened during COVID-19 and what is happening today, because number one, you've said things have happened. And number two, just recently you posted a story about the Great Resignation or not, about how people's attitudes have fundamentally shifted. Attitudes about work have fundamentally shifted during the pandemic. Why do you think, actually, no, not why, how do you think people's attitudes have shifted during the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been so fascinating to watch this play out. I think at first people were very afraid and they were just trying to cling to their jobs and survive. And now that we are much farther along in the pandemic and we've spent more time at home, it's been really neat to notice how people's attitudes and minds have shifted towards work. And I've been thinking about it the past couple of days, trying to nail like what is different about this moment. And it wasn't until today when I read an article in The Atlantic that I think brought a lot of clarity to it for me. And this article was written by a writer named Derek Thompson. And he was talking about what they're calling the Great Resignation, which is record-setting highs, particularly in the US, of people quitting their jobs.
Talks about a revolution in worker expectations.
Yes.
Revolution.
Yeah. So what is the Great Resignation? People quitting their jobs in mass waves, and also people who haven't yet quit who are seriously considering it. What is that all about? And that revolution in expectation is twofold. One is people no longer want work to be the centerpiece of their identity and to have their life revolve around work. There is a shift to how people want to relate to their work and where they want it to sit in their list of priorities.
So it's this old line about, do we live to work, or I guess work to live?
Exactly. And I think the pendulum is swinging to, work to live. I think what else is happening is for people who have, who are not entrepreneurs, who, have jobs, they're asking a lot more from the companies they work for. They want to be paid well. They want to be treated well. They want to be valued. They want to be recognized. They want to have a healthy environment. So there's a lot of really, strong asks that people are asking of their employers. And it's a very interesting shift to, it's just a very interesting shift in the labor market.
And why do you think this has happened?
I think it's such a paradox, because the reason it's happening is like, there's two major aspects to it. One is that people want work not to be the centerpiece of their identity, but at the same time, it very much is. We work so much. We know, we take so much meaning and purpose from our work. And so it's this tension between not wanting work to define us, but also knowing that our work does define us. And if it defines us, then we want it to align with who we really are. And we want it to be a healthy place.
One of the things that I found, and lots of people commented about during the pandemic, is the boundaries between work and life blurred, because you didn't have that half-hour commute or 45-minute or hour-long commute, and the computer that was set up in your house was always there, and so you could work late into the evening, and people phoned late into the evening and the weekends. And so therefore, the boundary of I was at work versus I'm at home was no longer there. And so I found that a lot of people found that they were working longer. That said, at the same time, bosses often mistrusted that people were actually being productive and wondered whether they were snoozing or sleeping or walking their dog or away from the office. So what do you think? What caused this?
I think exactly. And that's the tension, is like we all went to work from home. Life became utterly integrated with work. And even when the opportunity to go back to the office has arisen, people have resisted it. So, what do we make of all that? I think in the old days, it was easier to separate work and life. Like you said, there was a space for work, there was a commute to work, and then there was a space for home. But I think the pandemic has, been like work from home on steroids, work and life integration on steroids. But even before the pandemic, we were moving toward that. As soon as I got my smartphone, my life was more integrated with work in a way that it never was when I just had a phone at the office that was my office line and then I left. So as soon as I had my smartphone, I could work on the weekends, I could work during my commute, I could work on my holidays, I could check email on the weekends. So this trend towards the complete integration of the two has already been happening. And then the pandemic made it even more so. And that's why I think people really are trying to separate the two, or if they're going to be fully integrated, they want work to be better.
They want work to be better. And this article is about the Great Resignation. So it's suggesting that lots of people are resigning and either retiring or taking on new jobs or starting entrepreneurial ventures, but they're unhappy with their current positions.
Absolutely. People, I think, are asking more of work than they ever have. People are asking work to give them purpose. People are asking work to give them identity. People are asking work to give them health. People are asking work to be their family. They want it to feel like a family. That's a lot to ask of work. And whether or not employers, how they respond to that will be very interesting to watch in the next 10 years, 5 years.
What is your definition of a successful career?
For me, okay, so let's take a step back. There's my definition of a successful career, and then there's your definition of a successful career. And the distinction is that success is highly personalized. There's no one definition of success that resonates with everyone. We define our success based on our values and what we think is important. So for some people, a successful career might be to become the prime minister, to have a tremendous amount of significance and impact and influence. For other people, a successful career might be the ability to pick up their kids from school at 3:30. For me personally, what I define as a successful career is a career in which I can have a positive stamp in the world, where I can contribute my strengths in an authentic way and make other people's lives better. That's my personal definition of a successful career. And maybe if we had to create a blanket, statement, it would be a career that allows you to meet what matters to you the most.
And how do you
to achieve what matters the most to you?
How do you figure out what matters the most to you?
Well, and that's it. That's where the reflection comes in, where you reflect on what your values are, which principles resonate the most, what you want life to be about, what you want work to be about. We all know what they are. We just need to think about it.
And so this again is something that's part of your Wayfinders program?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about this Wayfinders program. So the first thing before we even meet is you send me this Discovery Questionnaire that you called the Big Life Questions, the Big Life Questionnaire. and people respond with some of the answers that we talked about previously. Then what? We get together and what? You put us on a couch and we lie back and you start asking us deep psychological questions?
No, there's no couch. These days it's just Zoom. So after our first meeting, so I give you the questionnaire, you write down your answers, and then you share them with me. And in the first session with clients, we do that deep dive into who they are and what matters to them.
Dive into who they are and what matters to them.
Exactly.
Okay, go on.
So we will talk through the questions and their responses. I'll probably try to, probe a little bit deeper into the answers to understand, what is really important to this individual. And that is the first session. That sets the foundation of the work. So I have an understanding of what matters most to them, where they're stuck, and what ideally they'd like to kind of move toward. And after that, I send them away and they complete the first part of the wayfinding method, which is all about self-discovery. So it is diving deeper into their strengths, their values, interests, priorities, and weaknesses.
Strengths, values, priorities, and interests. Okay.
Exactly.
Let's talk about each one of these. So strengths, the things that you're good at.
Yeah.
The priorities, what you want to achieve, I guess. Interests, what you like. And values, what you feel is important.
Exactly. Just to expand on the interest piece, it's also what you're curious about learning.
Okay.
Okay. And that's particularly important in the career context because,
so you're not bored.
Pardon me?
So you're not bored.
Exactly. And what happens to a lot of people is, they spend 10 or 15 years in a career. And if they're lucky, it's engaging and they're constantly finding opportunities for learning and growth and challenge. But for many people, they might have reached the limit of that. And if they're not curious or being challenged, they will really find themselves feeling pretty stuck. And so just as much, strengths are important and values are important, but to me, where usually the aha moments come up is around that piece of interest and what you want to learn about next.
That's interesting. Have you ever heard of the Japanese concept Ikigai?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have.
It has some similarities to what you're talking about. And I think the interest comparable would be what you're passionate about, what you're excited about.
Absolutely. And so some people are able to pursue those interests outside of work. But for others, finding a way to either incorporate them in work or finding a new career that orients themselves around those interests, those are all different ways to grow in, and feel a greater sense of satisfaction in work.
Okay. So you've gone through that big questionnaire. You've done a deep dive into it. We've then talked about our strengths and our interests and our values. What next?
So then we'll probably get together again and we'll go through the findings to really try to pull out the key elements that we want to build around and that we want to build our ideation around. So if you're
what?
Yeah, exactly.
Our ideation. What's ideation?
Ideation is brainstorming. So if you've ever heard of design thinking is a framework that designers who design products use to, come up with ideas for the product. And I use that model in my coaching. So the first part is really getting to know the user, except in this case, it's the user of your life and it's you. The next stage is brainstorming. So we take the key elements that you want this next chapter of your life to have, and then we start to brainstorm around those elements. Okay, so you may choose that you really want to focus your either next career move or whatever's next around the ideas of learning, using your problem solving skills, giving back, and aligning with your value of community, and maybe we select those.
What do you mean aligning with your value of community?
So I just made that up as maybe one of your values, right?
Oh, okay.
So I would work with my clients to pick the pieces from the self-discovery that are most important to them. And from there, we would come up with ideas of ways that they could meet those objectives. And that's the brainstorming piece. And we don't just come up with one idea, like quit your job and, go back to school. That's one idea. We
Go
try
be a
to
missionary in Africa.
There you go. We try to come up with a few solid ideas to test.
I think
go ahead.
This is really good because a lot of people just sort of get on the conveyor belt or rat wheel or whatever you want to call it of life and don't stop to check in with themselves and whether this life is actually meeting their objectives.
Absolutely. And I think we touched on that a little bit earlier. We tend to go through life at a pretty fast pace. We get busy with work and family and our obligations, and we don't often stop to take stock of where we're at and where we want to go. And when my clients come to me, they're at a place where they can't go on without taking that stock. And so
because something's traumatic has happened in their life or their career, or just questioning things. Like they can't go on without taking stock.
I mean, they can go on. They can go on. Don't get me, okay, that was a bit dramatic. They can go on, but they're fed up with feeling unsatisfied, right? They're
fed up with feeling unsatisfied. Sounds good. We're chatting tonight with Lauren Malach, who is a former executive recruiter who has found her calling in being a coach for people in their careers. And she has a fascinating program called the Wayfinding Program Method that helps mid-career executives that are frustrated, that are trying to figure out what their life's all about, to find their way. And sounds fascinating. We're going to take a final break and come back with some concluding comments with Lauren Malach in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Lauren Malach, who's got 13 years of experience as an executive search director, and she's now a professional certified coach, and she helps create career and life-changing turning points, she says, for unfulfilled executives and disengaged mid-career professionals. Sounds like something lots of us could make use of. And she does that by way of a wayfinding method program. And Lauren, we were talking about some of these big life questions. You called it the discovery questions that you take people through. Can you share some of them with us?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me. So the first question any coach will ask you is around your goals. Coaching is very goal-oriented, which also may distinguish it from some of the other practices we talked about earlier, like psychotherapy. Your coach is here to help you achieve your goals. So the first question I always ask clients are to identify what they'd like to get out of coaching. If coaching goes as well as they could possibly hope for, what will they take away? What will they get? And this is where clients begin to identify the items that we're going to be working on together. The next one is that big one I was telling you about. And I like to start off with, the big life question. So what do you want to have happen in your lifetime so that you consider your life satisfying and well-lived?
That's interesting. I think a lot of people would have difficulty, frankly, answering that. One of the ways that I've worked with people on answering that is to say to them, think about what you'd actually like someone to say at your eulogy. And if they would say something like, well, he worked for 50 years as a post office, and that's not satisfying to you, that sort of tells you that you're not living the life that you want to live.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because on my website, I offer an activity called Start with the End in Mind, and that's what it is. It invites people to write their eulogy. And it can illuminate so many interesting insights into what really matters to us and who really matters to us. So absolutely. This one, the one we just talked about, what do you want to have happen in your lifetime? People have so much in common here. I mean, people want to be remembered for, being a good parent, giving back to their community, doing something of significance, making the world a better place. So it's very interesting because you'll see a lot of commonalities in what people say. Here's the next one. And this is one I asked you earlier. If there were a secret ambition in your life, what would it be?
A secret ambition. That's interesting. Why do most people hide their true ambitions and keep them secret?
I think that people have ambitions that they don't share because they think they're unrealistic.
Yeah.
So, they hold it as something close to their heart, but not something that they realistically would ever do. Other people actually find this question very difficult to answer. In fact, if I were to answer this, I don't even know what I'd say. I don't think I've ever had a secret ambition, but I have seen lots of fun things come up for people, like being a pilot or a TV host or, MMA fighter, whatever it may be. But it can tell you a lot about what's missing.
People want.
Yeah, what people want, exactly. This one is interesting. People find this one difficult. Describe your dream career. What, when, where, and with whom?
Your dream career. Okay.
Exactly. A lot of times people will respond, that's what I'm here for. I don't know.
I agree. I think a lot of people don't know. And so that's why I think that that's why people need to go through that ikigai concept that I talked to you about, and or your these discovery questions and the deep probing that you talked about, the deep dive.
Absolutely.
We've only got a minute left. What else?
Okay. So if we only have a minute left, I'll move down through the list to some that I really like. What are your 5 gifts or talents? Or what are 5 of your gifts or talents? So what are 5 things that you're just naturally amazing at? And people actually tend to have pretty clear insight into this one because we later do assessments around strengths and external assessments. And it's very interesting to compare what they started with to what some of these external assessments say. This one is very important. The next one is, how do you get in your own way?
Oh, really? What blockages do you have? Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. How do you sabotage yourself? What is your most thrilling success or proudest achievement?
Thrilling success. I love that.
Yeah. What activities have meaning and heart for you?
What do you mean heart?
What activities just make you happy?
Right. Okay.
What activities just fill your heart?
And then number 10?
Number 10, what activities do you get fully absorbed in?
So they just completely take over, get in the zone. That I love it. Get into the zone. No question. Well, this has been really interesting and helpful. Thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you and make use of your services and your coaching and try out this wayfinding program, how do they do it?
Thank you. They can get in touch with me through my website, which is www.laurenmalachcoaching.com. They can also find me on LinkedIn, where I spend a lot of time, and they can hit me up on LinkedIn with any questions they have, or they can engage in conversation with me. I post there several times a week. I'm really active in engaging with anyone who responds to me there.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren Malach, for joining us today and telling us a little bit about your wayfinding program and about your coaching business. As I mentioned, Lauren Malach, she's got 13 years of experience as an executive search director, and she's now a professional coach, and she helps create career and life-changing turning points for unfulfilled executives and mid-career professionals that might find themselves disengaged, looking for something more in their life. And she develops turnaround strategies through the Wayfinding Method program. Lauren Malach, thanks for joining us. That's our show for today, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Good night,
Brian,
everybody.
thank you so much. Thank you.